This is a typical drugstore that you would find in the 1890s. And if you notice in the window, you will see a lot of different patent medicines. Back in the 1890s, anyone could make medicine. You really did not need to be qualified to make a medicine and put it out on the market. What they would do is they would make a lot of these medicines at home, and it was more or less like holistic medicine, but they made medicine and then they had people sign testimonies stating how well the medicine worked. And most of these people that made the testimonials were usually paid by the person that made the medicine. If you look in the window, you will see two vials that are in the window, the green vial and the red vial. This would be the sign that would tell you that this is a drugstore. These two vials represent two of the humors. A long time ago, they used to teach the humors in school, but now they don't teach them anymore. The green, it always has to be closest to the door because this represents the vial side. A long time ago, they believed that when a person was sick, the fluids in his body would shift. And when they shifted to the vial side, they were sick. So this always has to be closest to the door. And when you came in, the pharmacist's job was to RXU, and the R stands for remedy and the X stands for unknown, is to bring you back over to the hemoglobin side or the blood side, which would show you that you were well. Okay, now that we're inside the pharmacy, maybe we should look at some of the credentials that are on the wall. This pharmacy belonged to a man named Mr. Reinhold. And Mr. Reinhold had three pharmacies in the city of Detroit. One was on Hastings Street, one was on St. Alban, and one was on Chester Street. This is the pharmacy from Chester Street. These are his credentials that are on the wall. Whenever you see a diploma like this from the 1800s that has a seal and ribbon, that's university. Anytime you see a diploma that just has seal, that's the license for the person to practice his pharmacy skills. Now, if you come over here to this side of the pharmacy, you will see what we call a compounding counter. And this is where all the medicines were made. Every medicine was made on the spot. There were no medicines that were pre-made. And behind us, you'll see our apothecary cabinet. And in 2011, there was an inventory done on this cabinet to make sure that there's nothing in here that's going to be harmful to the public or to the students or the school children that come in for different tours. So everything that's harmful has been removed. We did find a lot of things here that should not have been here. We did find a lot of narcotics that should have been disposed of years ago, but now they're all gone. And so it's now safe for the children to come in and actually we can do some experiments in here with some of the chemicals that we deem safe. Okay. If you look at all of the bottles that are here, all of these bottles are original to this cabinet, and this is what a typical pharmacy would look like back in the 1800s. And also, if you look at some of the equipment that the pharmacist would have, and it's right here on the compounding counter, he would have a mortar and a pestle, and he would always tap it. If it rings like that, it's not cracked. That's cracked. So you can't use this. About 1970, they stopped using these. This had mercury and lead in it, and if you mix anything up in this mortar and pestle, especially for pediatrics, you're going to put mercury and lead right into the child medication. So a lot of times people don't use these anymore. They're just for decorative purposes now. Most of the mortars and pestles are made of some kind of ceramic material now. Okay. Also, we have a pill board here, and a pill paddle, and a spatula. And this is a pill counter. Once the pill pills are made, you can simply take them and line them up on your board here, and it will give you a count. It's very easy. Now when you go to different pharmacies, you'll see the people that are counting the pills. They have a pill tray, and they will be counting the pills by counting them out one at a time. This says 0 to 6, and this says 0 to 12, and it will actually give you a count right here. This is a different way of making pills. This is called a pill press. And it also does a couple of things. It also makes different ways of dispensing medicine. And I'm going to do this very quickly. After everything is mixed up, let's say your medicine has been mixed, and it will come out like a dough. And we can place it into our pill press like this. And then we can take this and we can pull it out. We can turn it over. Now we're going to press. And cut it off. And now we have a suppository. And this is the way that a lot of medicines were given to children, because now you don't have to try to find a vein, and you don't have to worry about the child choking on the medicine. So this is the way that suppositories were made back in the 1800s. Okay. And I'm going to clean this up a little bit, and we're going to move on. When we have the children come in, we usually try to get them involved in making medicine. The one thing children need to know is that most medicines come from nature, and we use this as our example. This is the bark from the white willow tree, and this came from our own Belle Isle. And on Belle Isle there are lots and lots of white willow trees. So what we went over, Carrie and I did, went over to Belle Isle, and we got some white willow bark. And if you scrape the back of it, you're going to get a powder, and it looks like this. And we took this and we just cleaned it up with a little bleach. That got rid of the mold, the fungus, the bacteria, and any insect eggs that may have been on the back of the bark. Now we have our medicine. This is acetylsalicylic acid. This is where you get aspirin from. And to make the medicine, all you need, we're going to use this mortar and pestle. You can take a little bit, put it inside. Anytime you use something on the compounding counter, it's removed and placed on the lip. That says one thing: done. We're going to need some bulk, and we can use this. Now, I prefer this because this is rice flour. I used this when I was in Korea because it's very sticky. It's a lot stickier than the regular wheat flours. So we can just put it in. That's going to hold everything together. And now we need a mortar or a binder, and we're going to use glycerin. There are two kinds of glycerin. One is made from petroleum, and this one is made from a plant. This is the one from the plant. A long time ago, they used to use egg white in medicine, but you can't put egg white in medicine anymore because some eggs have pathogens like salmonella and shigella, and you can actually give the person an infection by giving them the medicine, which is not a good idea. Okay, so after everything has been mixed up, we should get something that looks like this. And notice this is green, because when aspirin first came out, aspirin really wasn't white. Most people assume that aspirin has always been white, but it hasn't. And you can make it any color you want, because the pharmacist has a palette. And this is our palette here. And these are all the different colors that you can use to color your medicine. And you have to be very careful with these because these stain and they don't come out, especially the red. And if you look at the pill board, you can see that it has a plate here and it has a plate here. back of the paddle to do what they call your primary need, and that is to start the shape of the medicine that you want to make. And a long time ago, any medicine that was made for a child over 6 was made like a green pea, because that's the easiest shape for a child to swallow. And any medicine made for a person over 60 was made round like a green pea, because that's the easiest shape for an older person to swallow. So let's make some round pills. And once this has been rolled out like this, take our paddle and we can turn it over, put it here, press down, and you can feel whether or not the consistency is right when you're doing this. And this feels pretty good. And there's a round. And you can also take a chain of these pills, and this is called a daisy chain. And you can usually take a chain of these pills and place it right here on the pill board, and this will give you your count. But I'm not finished yet, because this is not really round, so you're going to have to cut one of them off. You're going to drop it into the palm of your hand, and now you're going to bead the pill. And you can bead this in a couple of seconds. And if it rolls, you pass. And if that rolls, it passes. And it should. It's kind of sticky, but it will pass. You want to make pills for a different person, someone that's in their 20s. You can simply take the round pills and turn them over and place them here on your pill board. Take your paddle and turn it over and place it here and go like this. There, and they should all be gone. Turn it over, and now your pills here. They're flat, but they're round. This large pill here is for a man. This would be for a woman. A man's pill always had to be bigger than a woman's pill. That's back in the 1800s. Okay. The reason for that was they thought then that if a man had pneumonia and a woman had pneumonia, it had to be a bigger, badder, stronger pneumonia to make a big, strong man sick. So they gave him a bigger pill. They're both 25 milligrams. This is just to satisfy the man's ego, right here. That's all it was. Most of the time it was serrated also. Had a line here so that the man, once he got well or the symptoms went away, he would break it in half and save it for the next time. Yeah, okay. There are a lot of things that we do here where we try to have interaction with the kids. One of them is we try to let them make some medicine, and I think we have enough time. I'm going to move this out of the way. And the one thing I want the students to realize is that as we go, we're always cleaning up. But you cannot have a sloppy counter if you're going to make medicine, especially in pediatrics. So let's move this out of the way, and let's go to another little container here. This came from the Swedish hospital in Busan, Korea, and it rings like a bell, it's shaped like a bell, and it looks like a bell. And in Korea they call it a bell jar. This is a wooden spoon, and they call it a spoon. They don't use fancy words in Korea. The girls make the jar and the boys make the spoon, because once the medicine is mixed or compounded, that's the way you're going to take it home. They give you the jar and they give you the spoon. So, this also has a stir ring that covers the bell jar, so when you're compounding and you're mixing things, no dirt, hair, bugs can get on the inside. Also, there's another little ring that goes here, and this is a steeping ring, so that if you have to cover up the stir hole and let it sit for a few minutes, nothing can crawl inside. Also, if you forget to put something in, you can hold onto the spoon and lift to the ring, lift till it rings, and it'll lock right on the counter and won't roll off. I usually have the students read what we're going to put into the bell jar. Now, sealed so that the children cannot handle any of these chemicals. We were told that anything that would be deemed as a chemical cannot be handled by the public or the students. So we epoxied all these clothes. Okay, they are epoxy. Okay. So let's add a little bit of this, and I usually have the student read this. I don't let them handle the jars. They just read it. Then I tell them, you're going to have to pretend that we put something in. And they can pretend. Put a little bit in, and usually they'll say that's enough. Place it on our lip. Go to the next one. This is cornstarch. This is going to be our bulk. Add a little bit of that. And this is confectionery sugar. And we add a little bit of this. And now we have a little bit of vegetable oil. This is going to be our mortar or our binder and hold everything together. A little bit of that. And I think we have one more. And this is our food coloring. And this is ferric. This is ferric or ferrous oxide. It's just rust. And we just put a little bit of that in. And we usually have to mix it. And put the top back on. Let it sit for a minute. Then we tell them, we're going to put this in the oven and we're going to cook it. But you cannot put this in the oven with the metal. The metal will heat up at a different rate than the ceramic. There will be an exchange of heat to the weaker material and crack the jar every time. So you're going to have to take this off before you put it in. And in Korea, we're going to put this in the oven. We're going to cook it for a few minutes or a few seconds because it really doesn't take that long. But before we put it in, we're going to have to take this off. So we're going to lift to the ring and lock it right on the counter. And in Korea, anything that's made out of paper, they call it a paper. They call it a paper until the use has been defined. Okay. Now, since we have to take this off, we're going to put it in and cook it. This is a paper cap. It's an oven cap. And when you get ready to take it out of the oven, you can simply grab the paper cap and you won't need oven mitts. Paper is a good insulator. It'll hold the heat in. And also, if there's anything that spills, the paper will absorb it and you won't have any smoke in your oven. So we're going to put it in the oven and we're going to cook it. And usually, when we put it in, I have one of the young ladies or young men count to 10. And they'll count to 10. Once they've counted to 10, we'll take it off. And we do this very quickly. Woo! Now we tell them we forgot to put something in. And usually the young ladies are better at it than the boys. I usually say we forgot to put swirls in. And I'll ask them, I says, well, do you know what swirls are? And sometimes they'll say no. And I say, well, if you're a cheerleader and you had pom-poms, could you swirl them? And they'll say yes. If you have a hula hoop, could you swirl? And they'll say yes. And so I said, well, sometimes when you're mixing things, you can't add things in the end. Not in all kind of chemical compounds, you cannot do that. When you're compounding, you can't add things at the end. But we can put them in now. And she will swirl it. And then we will show them actually what they made from all of the ingredients, a little bit of imagination, a little bit of heat as a catalyst to speed up the reaction. And now we have this is only one of the experiments that we do here. There may be more later on, but right now, this is all I do. This drugstore had a soda fountain so that you could have a soft drink while you were waiting for your medicine to be compounded. And this part of the drugstore was run by a person called the Soda Jerk. And the Soda Jerk, he got his name because actually the carbonated water or the soda water that they were putting into the different drinks, he would actually jerk this knob back and forth. And that's how he got his name. He was jerking the soda that was going to go into the drink that he was making. We have a Vernus container here, and we also have a picture of Mr. Werner. And And by the way, Mr. Verner was one of the first registered pharmacists in the state of Michigan. And Mr. Verner, when he made ginger ale, he really was not making a soft drink. Mr. Verner was actually making a medicine that was supposed to be for upset stomach, indigestion, and cramps. And ginger was used for upset stomach, indigestion, and cramps a long time ago. It was one of the spices that was actually used in medicine. But he mixed up a barrel and he put it in an oak keg and he took it downstairs and he put it in the basement of the drugstore. And then he went away to the Civil War, and when he came back, he opened it up and it didn't taste very bad, so he said, maybe I can sell this as a soft drink. So he did. He decided that he was going to sell it as a soft drink rather than a medicine. Okay. When Vernors first came out, Vernors was never served cold. Vernors was always served hot with a cinnamon stick in it. It was not a good idea to put ice in drinks back in the 1800s. Because most of the ice was cut from the Detroit River, and the sewage went right directly into the river back then. And you didn't want to put an ice that had sewage in it into your soft drink. Ice was usually put in ice boxes and wrapped in paper. It was never put in drinks. Okay, because it was really a real health hazard back then. But Vernors took off, and the sales were so great that Mr. Verner eventually just stopped being a pharmacist altogether. He stopped altogether being a pharmacist, and he was way ahead of his time when it came to inventing soft drinks and other drinks. But you can see his picture here. He's the tall man in the picture, and Vernors was in competition with Coca-Cola at one time. Most of you realize that Coca-Cola, when it first came out, actually had cocaine in it. Between 40 and 45 milligrams of cocaine in every bottle was in Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola was a pretty potent drink. Now Coca-Cola could not say that this will make you high. So what they did is Coca-Cola said this will refresh you and enlighten you, and it would, okay? It wasn't until the Harrison Act came out in the early 1900s that Coca-Cola stopped putting cocaine in the Coca-Cola because all the ingredients had to be listed on the bottle. So they substituted the cocaine for caffeine. And, but Coca-Cola did have drugs in it. A lot of people ask me, did Coca-Cola really have cocaine in it? Yes, it did. For about 3 years it did. Okay. Let's take a look at our phone in our drugstore, and you know that there's no way that you can pay for a phone call. Actually, you would actually pay the pharmacist to use the phone. You would just give him a nickel or a dime or whatever you decided to charge. And this is called a trunk phone. When you lifted this, and you turn the handle, you would get the operator, and the operator would connect you to the person that you wanted to talk to. And she had a trunk line, and this was a trunk phone. There were 99 other people on the same line with you. So later they had private lines, but they also had party lines where there may be 3 people on the same line. Then it went to semi-private where there were 2 people on the same line, and then it went to just 1 person on the same line. But this was a trunk phone. You were supposed to hang up and not listen in on other people's business, but that didn't happen all the time. Okay, never lay this down like this and go away and do something and forget it, because everybody in town could hear, yes, what was happening in your house, because this is open now. This is what cuts it off and hangs down. This is open. You can hear everything. Okay. Most of the operators for this were all women, and the switchboard was actually in their bedroom. They were on duty 24/7. So they had a rule back in the 1800s. No calls before 10 and no calls after 10 so that the operator could have some free time. Okay. But this is a trunk phone. This is the way the phones were back in the day. And 3 minutes was kind of the rule of thumb. You talked 3 minutes and then you were supposed to get off the phone so someone else could use it. Okay. But mostly this phone was used mostly for emergency. It wasn't used for just everyday conversation because a lot of people did not have phones. Did not have phones. And we talked to the kids here. All the kids that are standing here, they all have a phone. Yes, this was a luxury. This is a Nickelodeon. At one time, the colors here on top match the colors on the wheel. So when you push this down, this wheel would spin. But before that, you would wind it up so that music would play. Notice here that if you put a nickel in, your chances of winning this amount is a better chance than winning here, which is $2. So when you push this down, this wheel would spin, and if the numbers match, then you won. But there's one drawback to this machine. Back in the 1890s, Michigan law stated anytime you constantly made a wager and did not gain from that wager, you were gambling. So what happened is, if this matched up and a blue token would fall into the cup, and this is called a chip, would fall into this cup, and you would take the blue coin and give it to the pharmacist, and he would pay you under the table. Okay. But if you lost, down here, a book of gum, a pack of gum, or a book of matches, or a little tube that had a fortune in it would fall down here. Now you did gain something, and that's the way they skirted the law, is by actually giving something to the winner and to the loser. So you actually did gain something. But this was illegal, and this would not be out here. It would normally be in a back room because women were not allowed to stand within 90 feet of any gambling device back in the 1900s. So this would be probably in the back. A man would come in, get a cigar, and they would go back and probably put a couple of nickels in and gamble. And ironically, this was exchanged for what you know as the jukebox. Okay. You don't play music. Okay. You listen to music, but you play a slot machine. And since the jukebox replaced the slot machine, you always play music, like you play the slot machine. That's where that term came from. This structure had one item that everybody loved, and they would come in and you could use it whether you bought something at the soda fountain or had a prescription, and it was the bathroom. And it had a flushing toilet, and it had a tank that's here. There was another tank on the roof that collected rainwater that they used to flush the toilet, and there used to be a tube that came down so you could see whether or not there was enough water in the tank on the roof before you flushed the tank down here. Okay. If there was not enough water in the tube, there was always a bucket here on the side where you could use that to flush the toilet. And the one thing I want you to notice about this restroom is there's no place to wash your hands. There's no place to wash your hands. And this toilet was actually invented by a man named Mr. Crapper, and you can actually read about the history of it right here on this label. And Mr. Crapper really didn't make a lot of money on this invention. The person that made the money was another man named Scott when he came out with toilet paper, because up until around 1900, there was no toilet paper. You had to bring your own handkerchief or sponge with you when you went to the bathroom. And it was not very sanitary back then in the day. And they really, the paper that they used back then, okay, was really scrap paper. And it would plug up the sewer line real quick. And that became a real problem. Now paper is biodegradable. But up until that time, they really had a lot of problems with the sewer lines, with the paper being plugged up the sewer line. But if the door was closed like this, and there was no hat hanging on the doorknob, there was a woman inside. If the door was closed and there was a hat hanging on the outside of the knob, there was a man inside. Okay. If there was a woman inside using the toilet, no man could stand here and watch a woman come out of the bathroom. This is a Victorian era, and you could not watch a woman exit the privy, as they used to call it. So you either had to turn your back or go outside if this door was closed and there was a woman inside. You could not watch her come out of the bathroom. If it's open like this, then there's no one inside. And that's the way, because there's no signs on here that says man or woman. They had their own code of the way that they use this restaurant. And it worked, you know, it would work. Yes.